Good evening, everyone. It is August 8th. We are here for a work session of the City Council. We're going to go ahead and begin with public comment on non-agenda items. Any member of the public who wishes to speak to the council on any item can go ahead and come forward in the room or raise your hand if you are on Zoom. Seeing none, we will close the public comment period. And we're going to hop right into the first work session, Council, which is City Manager's Office Broadband Report. City Manager, please. And welcome back.
Yeah, thank you, Council. It's good to be here. So I'm going to start us off tonight, but Brandon Moen, our management analyst, or administrative, what title did we give you? Administrative or management? Management. Thank you, sorry. I have to update my brain. Anyway, Brandon's going to help me with the presentation, and largely because he has been working on some research in Q1 and Q2 of this calendar year to kick us off in these efforts. So you'll recall, next slide, am I doing this? Sorry, I'm getting with the program here. There we go. Maybe, there we go. So just as a quick reminder, Council, one of your adopted goals for 2023 is that we'll assess community connectivity options in effort to ensure adequate broadband infrastructure to retain workforce and businesses. And by workforce, we mean, sufficient broadband, as I understand your goal, to serve individual people, right? Support their efforts to be productive in the workforce, which of course ties into our economic development efforts, and to support adequately our businesses as they conduct their various business activities. You'll recall that this goal adopted this year mirrors almost verbatim goal or strategy number 10 out of the Thrive Economic Development Plan that the City Council adopted in early 2020. There are a number of action steps in the Economic Development Plan, and we are about 12 to 18 months behind on the action plan schedule, and that's a byproduct of COVID having hit us in March of 2020, literally about 8 weeks after we adopted this plan. But the good news is your goal this year mirrors an objective that through that community planning process had been identified as needed and worthy as part and parcel of our economic development effort and process for the next 10 years. So with that, I'm going to bring Brandon up and let him walk you through the research that he's conducted in the first half of this year. Then once he walks you through that, I'll step in and talk to you about what I intend to recommend we proceed forward with in the third and fourth quarter of 23 and into 24 as well to attain this goal. Just a quick one thing I want to say before Brandon comes up. While we adopted this goal in 2020 originally, reiterated our support for it through your actions this year, it's important to know that this has become a really important statewide topic too. So what Brandon's going to talk to you about is the fact that we can plug into, instead of carrying this bucket of water alone, we are going to be able to, and I'm very excited about the ability to plug into the statewide effort to expend a significant amount of federal money that is coming down through the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act. So that's a change from what we thought we would need to do in 2020, but a positive one. Brandon?
Mr. Moen, welcome.
Thank you, City Manager, for that introduction. Mr. Mayor, council members. So as City Manager Jordan said, I have been researching through the first half of this year trying to gather all the information the Wyoming Business Council has been providing regarding the broadband efforts going on at the federal level down all the way to the municipal level. The Wyoming Business Council has assessed, for the most part, fulfilling some part of that goal of assessing connectivity options. They've provided 2 separate map options available for us to, sorry, I should probably move that forward so you can see it. They provided 2 mapping options available. One of them is provided by the feds from the FCC. They have a map that provides kind of basic broadband accessibility in different parts of America. And then the Wyoming Business Council has created a separate map that takes ISP, Internet Service Provider input, and has provided location by location in Wyoming what areas are serviced, what areas aren't. They have laid out specific guidelines regarding that. There is unserved, which is less than 25 megabits a second download, 3 megabits a second upload. That is considered unserved. It is not sufficient for the level of technology we currently use in society today. Underserved is between 25 download, 3 upload, and 100 download, 20 upload. Between those two numbers is considered underserved. They have sufficient for now, but maybe not in the future. And then finally served, this is the threshold they're shooting for over time, 100 megabits download, 20 megabits a second upload. That's the goal, and that's where this funding is serving. So those priorities fall on underserved being the most prioritized, followed by underserved, and then followed by served. And that is due to the increase in technology over time. This number may be more than needed at the moment. However, technology will continue to be more demanding. It will continue to require more bandwidth. So over time, they'd like to make this scalable and make sure that over time we can increase this.
Questions at the end, or?
Mr. Moen, do you have a preference?
I have no preference.
Go ahead, Counselor.
Okay, thanks. I haven't had a chance to take a look at the federal and the state map, but I suspect you have.
Yes.
So are they aligned or are they far apart? And I suspect maybe a distance because, right?
So since they do location by location, there are thousands of locations, so I couldn't speak to exactly how accurate they are or how similar they are in what they show. However, I can say that I think the Business Council's map is a little more accurate. It provides maybe some areas that the FCC says are covered that really aren't. I think that maybe the FCC's is a little more of a higher up view and less of a very specific down to the location.
Right.
And so I would say that likely the Business Council map is going to be more reliable. The FCC map is a little, it has a more clouded kind of generalized coverage over surface area rather than individual locations. So it doesn't quite break it down as specifically as the Business Council map does. And that Business Council map is provided by internet service providers local to this area, so they have better insight, I would say. No offense to the federal government, but
No, I know.
they certainly are a little more knowledgeable being the ones providing that service.
Right.
So.
Okay,
If I
thanks.
could, Mayor, Councilors, the FCC map also, that effort predates the Business Council's work, as I understand, and really probably laid some of the groundwork for the programs that have been approved by Congress through the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act. So I think Brandon's absolutely correct. And the map that the Business Council is working on, he's going to talk to you about their planning effort, which is essential to access the federal funds. And so I think that at this point, the Business Council map is more reliable and will become increasingly reliable over time based on the mapping inputs that they're requesting from communities, ISPs, individuals, et cetera.
Okay, thanks.
And one thing I should clarify as well, they did have a challenge process with the Wyoming Business Council maps. So people or individuals, ISPs, were able to provide challenges to locations that aren't serviced that maybe said they were or vice versa. So there was an active input from outside entities as well to ensure that it was accurate. So
Interesting. Public comment might be good as well, right? Because having property in Fremont County. Yeah.
And Council, we included the hyperlinks for both maps in your presentation. I think the clerk is just giving you like a quick eagle-eye view of each of those links, but they're in the presentation, so you can certainly explore them. It's interesting because you can drill really far down to individual addresses within the community. So yeah, this is a little bit of kind of what you'll see when you go there, but it's very intuitive and user-friendly if you want to really take a deep dive.
Thank you.
All right, back to you, Mr. Moen. Thank you, City Clerk and City Manager.
So as far as requirements, those are the requirements as far as bandwidth goes in order to ensure that there is proper bandwidth available. And then on top of that, we did attend several events hosted by the Wyoming Business Council in order to make sure we had the fullest understanding available. I did attend a listening session at the Albany County campus of LCCC with IT Administrator Jonathan Rhodes. We sat in on a listening session, were able to learn a little more, see some slideshows they presented as well as what their plans were. This is still very early in its process, and as I go through this, you're going to see that we're still very ahead of this, which is a good thing. I think that we're going to be well enough ahead to really have a stake in this plan and make sure that we can provide input where necessary, as well as the listening sessions. There was a special meeting hosted by the Wyoming Business Council that I did also attend. There was also a asset survey that the city submitted. We submitted with the input of several outside entities such as LCCC and the County Emergency Management Agency. We made sure to discuss planning and the chance of interruption of accessibility to broadband, a number of different assets that the Wyoming Business Council specifically was gathering in order to see how we as a municipality could contribute and help assist in these efforts. So they inquired on real estate, leasable real estate for towers, fiber optic cable, numbers of other equipment like that. So that was something we did submit. We did provide feedback to the Wyoming Business Council in that regard. There are two basic grants that are going to be primarily what they discussed. That is going to be the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program, known as BEAD. That focuses almost entirely on infrastructure that is mostly going to applied for by internet service providers, specifically those that can provide these services. Municipalities, I believe, are capable of applying if they have the resources to provide that public utility or uphold that infrastructure. Otherwise, it's mainly ISPs that will be applying for this grant to make sure that that infrastructure is implemented. It focuses mostly on final mile infrastructure going to individual buildings or individual areas, less than those long spaces of fiber optic that are larger, that go from larger data centers. The second grant is a state digital equity capacity program that focuses primarily on digital access. That is a very important aspect they're trying to focus on beyond just infrastructure access, is affordability, technological literacy, cybersecurity, and a number of other ways of ensuring that there's equitable broadband access across all of Wyoming. And the next slide actually describes some of the Wyoming Business Council goals, which are reliable, high-speed internet for all Wyoming citizens and businesses in their homes and communities, increase Wyoming broadband subscribers, including low-income programs, increase number of Wyoming households with access to one or more devices, number of Wyoming citizens equipped to use the internet needs to be increased, supporting economic, educational, health, and related goals, creating a safe internet environment for Wyoming residents, cybersecurity both and privacy, and then offering as many internet-enabled government services as possible for each Wyoming citizen. That's going to be provided by the state at least, and this could be brought into larger swaths of government as time goes on. Overall, the goals for digital access are to make sure that even if that infrastructure is implemented, that everyone can afford it, that everyone understands how to use it appropriately to their benefit, and to make sure that it is just generally accessible across the board. As far as BEAD goes for the infrastructure, it's around $350 million the state will be receiving from the federal government. They will be distributed, like I said, to internet service providers. There are a couple caveats to receive this funding as an internet service provider, one of which is being a provider of ACP, which is the Affordable Connectivity Program provided by the federal government. That I will describe later on in this slideshow, but that is a way to make broadband more affordable to citizens that are low income. Oh, thank you.
Nancy's going to take care of it.
So there are 4 prioritized areas specifically when providing this infrastructure funding, and it's going to be unserved locations, like I said, underserved locations, low-income households that may not be able to afford to install this infrastructure, and then community anchor institutions such as colleges, schools, libraries, hospitals, and other institutions like that that are necessary and that will need that infrastructure to be up to par as technology becomes more advanced and as they need it. This will be important, especially with the scalability like we covered on the hopefully increasing population going into the Thrive plan, where we are shooting for the 50K population mark going into 2030. So the scalability will be important as the population increases. So digital equity access, these are grants as described, geared mostly to digital access. There are several different grants being provided throughout this process. These are going to help provide technological literacy. They're going to provide cybersecurity as covered. The first is a planning grant provided to the state in order to develop a digital access plan to ensure that they have all of the necessary planning to implement these strategies to provide this widespread access to broadband. This has already been, I believe, provided to the state. They have currently just released the draft of their first digital access plan. It's open for public comment until, I believe, August 17th. I've created a report on that, and it's pretty dense. It's 50 pages, so there's a lot there, but they have provided the draft. It's currently being publicly commented on by a number of entities across Wyoming to ensure it is reaching everyone and to make sure that it covers everything it needs to cover. And then there's the capacity building grant that will be funding given to the state of Wyoming, distributed to the WBC, and will help it will be laid out in this plan. The draft lays out kind of the basic strategies employed to provide this funding. However, it is not all-encompassing and is still being drafted over time. It will be beginning in 2024, and it's a 5-year-long dissemination of these funds. So each year they will hand out some of this money out to different organizations that will provide these digital access options. So as we discussed, we skipped one. So the Digital Equity Capacity Program, that is a grant that can be applied for by municipalities specifically, straight to the federal government, receive that funding straight from the federal government. It can be applied for by a number of different entities beyond just the state. That will be a separate grant, and it will be available to us. It will be available to any other municipality. We will be able to provide that funding to the necessary groups needed to ensure that digital access is improved in the state of Wyoming. That will begin in 2025, and it will go out for 4 years. There are a certain number of covered groups that are prioritized with digital access. These are populations that may already, by the merit of their population, not have the same level of access to broadband as others, and so these are the prioritized groups. They are rural citizens, people over 60, low-income households, which is 150% or less of the federal poverty guidelines, racial or ethnic minorities, disabled individuals, English as a second language, or not their first language, English as a language barrier as well, veterans, and then incarcerated individuals. These are groups that are prioritized with these digital access efforts, ensuring that they have the ability to use it, the access to it, and the security to ensure they do it safely. The Affordable Connectivity Program, as discussed prior, that is a discount on internet services provided by the federal government. It is $30 a month for those that qualify under that 150% of the poverty guidelines for households. They will receive a $30 a month discount. On qualifying tribal lands, there is a $75 a month discount on broadband. There is also a $100 discount on devices such as iPhones, laptops, computers, as long as they provide, if they pay $10, more than $10, less than $50 into that device, there will be a $100 discount. The current, oh yes.
Sorry, I have a
Please go ahead, Councilor.
So you had said, just to clarify, for the ISPs to be able to qualify for the BEAD funding, they had to have the ACP program in place? Is that right?
Yes.
Sorry.
That is correct.
Okay,
Through you,
thank
Mr. Mayor. So they do have to be a provider of ACP in order to receive this BEAD funding. So this is ensuring that this furthers that goal of digital access. So Albany County has a 19% enrollment rate of all eligible households. So these are all households that fall under the qualifications to receive this funding. Only 19% do. 81% of these households don't either know about it or haven't applied. And I think that that's a very important number that I think that we could absolutely work to improve. It is higher than the state average of 17%.
Councilor Doherty, please.
Would you repeat that first number? What percentage would be eligible in Albany County?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So 19% are currently enrolled, so 81% would be eligible but are not currently enrolled. 19% of all eligible households are enrolled.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So a large majority of those eligible falling under those income guidelines have not enrolled as of now.
follow-up question.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go.
Councilor Shumway, did you have a question too?
Well, I do. My question is this. According to the previous slide, we're showing that the Thrive strategic plan shows that we're going to hit 50,000. And you said by the year 2030. My calculations is 2067. Because we only grow at 2% or less.
Yeah, so that was the, through you, Mr. Mayor, that was the original projection through the Strive, sorry.
Okay, obviously, we're not going to hit it. What is the benefit if we hit 50,000? Because you touched on it, but I don't know what benefit it is. Do we have more access or more?
So there's no necessary benefit for the broadband specifically. However, making sure that this broadband infrastructure is scalable in the case that we do hit that number prescribed in the Thrive strategic plan. Having this access to ensure that this infrastructure can be improved or is already beyond the capacity needed at the moment in case that there is a population increase will ensure that over time as that population increases, we have the necessary broadband infrastructure to support it.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Richardson, did you have a question as well?
I did. So of that, of those who are eligible, do we have a number of like either a hard number of residents or percentage of Laramie that would be eligible to meet?
So, through you, Mr.
We're going to
Mayor.
get to that.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay.
Jumping the gun. Apologize. It's okay to say that. We're going there.
Yeah, there's
Back to
there's
you
a
then.
lot here.
Yeah.
Just hold it. Sorry about that.
So there were a number of strategies and objectives outlined by the WBC in order to help guide this process and form these plans. One of these was to reduce underserved and unserved locations, those with either less than 25.3 or under 100 and 20 upload, to reduce those to 0% over the course of 5 years, to use this funding to ensure that there's not a location in Wyoming that falls under that 120 threshold. As far as ACP subscriptions go, this was a big point of focus for them, was to ensure that there's increased awareness of ACP to the citizenry, increases in low-cost options. They, I believe for the BEAD plan, these ISPs will also need to provide a low-cost plan beyond just ACP. So there will be at least 2 options available to those who may not have the funding to purchase a more pricey internet plan. There was a focus on device ownership and availability, making sure that there's device loaning available as much as possible, such as at libraries or other anchor institutions, to ensure that if you can't afford to purchase a device, you can at least loan one. And then the final focus was cybersecurity. As stated, there was a hope that we could develop a way to ensure that Wyoming citizens not only have access to the internet, but can do so in a way that is secure and that is safe for their information, their internet use. And then this is the page. I hope this will help. There was a number of statistics they provided as far as counties go within Wyoming. As far as specifically Albany County, we do have they provided ranges of numbers. We did fall within the highest category of terrestrial and satellite broadband adoption. So we did fall under we were one of the highest adopted counties as far as access so far. There is a 32% of the population below 150% of those federal poverty guidelines, meaning that 32% of the population of Albany County would be eligible. So provided that number, 19% of those eligible households have currently enrolled. So I hope that provides a little better scale of the amount of households we're talking about, but there is 32% of the population in Albany County would have been able to enroll in this program. We are amongst the highest device owning percentages of any county in Wyoming. Again, they provided ranges, so I don't have a specific exact percentage of device ownership, but it was between 95 and 98% of Albany County that owns at least one device capable of broadband, such as an iPhone, a tablet, a laptop, a computer, something like that. And then there was less than 10% of the county that could access the necessary and allotted amount of broadband for less than $50 a month. So to receive the internet that they are hoping we can provide universally across Wyoming, less than 10% of the county can receive that for under $50 a month. And then I believe we will be getting into the strategies City Manager Jordan was hoping to provide.
Nancy, I just sent
Thank you.
a link. Could you pull that up? So council, based on, and I know that's a lot of dense data, and the report that Brandon's been working on is about 50 pages, really. But I think probably what you're most interested in is based on sort of what we've learned in this first half of the year, where do we intend to go in the second half of the year, and what's our action plan going forward based on what we've learned about the state's efforts to utilize those federal funds. I sent Nancy this link to just this one page of the draft plan the Business Council has published, which, as you know, federal funds require some sort of plan. Nancy, I'll give you a page number reference. I'm sorry, that didn't get you quite to where I was hoping to go. Let's go to page 30 of 54 of the plan. And this, I think we're looking at the press release, possibly. No, yeah, you're right, 30. There you go. So I wanted to just show you this page. This is what Brandon was alluding to. You can see because of the low incomes in Albany County generally, you'll see for Albany County, we have 32%, according to the draft report, of individuals who have incomes below 150% of the federal poverty line. So that's actually the highest in the state, so of all the counties. So I assume that is going to be an area that we will experience our greatest degree of eligibility under the state's plan and under the programs that Brandon's talked to you about. So I wanted to show you that, and if you don't have any questions, I'll continue with the PowerPoint presentation.
City Manager, I was just curious, is this the document that's available for public comment at this point?
Correct. This
Thank
is
you.
on the Wyoming Business Council's website. If you haven't been able to read it, I would urge you to do so.
Thank you.
I suspect we'll be making some comments back. I'll give you an example. And this is a draft report, and they're eager to hear from us. But if you look at the narrative that leads into this report, there's a statement that counties of, I think it says, right above the report, it says Wyoming counties with small to medium-sized populations like Albany and Fremont have a relatively higher percentage of households with income below 150% of the federal poverty line. I feel like there could be some additional clarity there. I don't think this is a population-driven statistic. This is a measure of working poor, in my opinion. And that sentence talks about households, but the chart refers to individuals, so we're going to be looking for some clarification there, and that's exactly what they're hoping. This is not being critical, but this is areas where I think we can work to help the state better understand the conditions in Albany County, and the fact that we have a lot of working low-income individuals. And this is not a reflection purely of student population, which is, the grand myth I grew up with as a Wyoming resident, that Laramie's numbers on poverty and area median or average median income are skewed by student population. And what we learned from our Thrive Economic Development Plan, when we brought that firm in, we asked them to take a deep dive into those socioeconomic numbers that the census gathers, exclude student population, and really look at household and individual income for working individuals in this community, and then affordability, right? And what we learned is that we have a lot of working poor people in Laramie, and it has not a lot to do, or not nearly as much as I think the myth has said it has to do with student population. So those are areas where, like I was just looking at this, I haven't even talked to Brandon about it yet, but an area where I think we have some opportunity to work with the state to better understand these affordability metrics, because this could be key for our community when we know we have so many working low-income individuals, but they probably are not getting access to broadband at a rate that is affordable to them, or at speeds and such that are really making it useful to maybe help them increase skills, advance into different careers, professions, et cetera, and engage in workforce development if that's what they'd like to do.
Councilor O'Doherty, please.
I just would request that we could put a link to this Wyoming, to the WB,
Yes.
whatever it is, in the agenda for, if anyone from the public is watching this later, they can find the link.
Yeah, that would be great. We'd be happy
Thank
to do
you.
that. We could probably put out a press release and ask people to give a look at this and see if they would like to comment on it. That would be great. Okay.
Thank you, Councilor.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the presentation and back to the, okay, what now, part of the presentation. What are we doing for the next half of the year? So based on what we've learned, I think we have kind of 3 areas that I'm recommending that we continue working diligently in for this next year. And the first of those is to continue really a strong intergovernmental collaboration with the Wyoming Business Council. These funds are coming to Wyoming through that federal, we're up one slide, Nancy, I think, from this one. Up another one. There we go. Oh, thank you. Okay, that's good. So really engage, continue to work with the Wyoming Business Council, informing them about Albany County, about things like what we just discussed. Work to make sure our ISPs are able to succeed and have input throughout this process as well. We're lay people, they're experts, their input's going to be really critical to the Wyoming Business Council's plan and to all of our future efforts. Also, in that first column there, we really need to engage with our other community, what is often called our anchor institutions, right? So other entities of government, the county, the community college, the school district, and make sure that they are participating in this process. And as Brandon said, we've already done some outreach like that, but there's opportunity for anchor institutions to perhaps have input now that we don't feel confident that they've adequately had representing Albany County, and then that will set the stage for maybe potential future grants. And I'll give you an example. In the Business Council plan, there's a discussion about Laramie County School District, our neighbor to the east, and that they have free Wi-Fi on all of their school district buses. I have no idea if our district has that. As far as I know, they don't, but you can see where that could be advantageous for students who might be brushing up on some homework on the way to school or something like that. So getting those anchor institutions engaged now could bear grant money and fruit down the road. And then in the third tranche there, just positioning for the future, making sure that we're partnering strongly with the Wyoming Business Council and that we're ready to apply for funding once this plan is accepted and the first allocation from the federal government comes to actually fund those outcomes. Another next step is public education, and I think this gets probably Councilor Richardson to where your question was sort of heading. We see there's a gap. There's that 81% of eligible households who really aren't taking advantage of or aware of probably of some opportunity to assist them with affordability under that affordable connectivity program. And so public education and outreach is a real opportunity area for us just to bring those folks better information and make it more readily accessible to them. And then you'll see under the access to device loaning as well, the Business Council is noting that 65.8% of Wyomingites making $20,000 or less do have access to a device, but you still have 34% of households who don't have device access or education about opportunities that might be applicable for device-level access. So public education is huge now that we understand that there's a gap in the community, and we can be working on that over this next year to get people aware of it and then keep them aware going into 24 into the state's implementation phase of their other grant programs. Next slide.
City Manager, 1 second.
Yeah,
Vice
absolutely.
Mayor, please.
Thank you. City Manager, I just had a question related to device availability. Would this funding cover the refurbishment and recycling? Because we have a number of corporations, the university, that are frequent updaters of devices. When these devices could be really usable to a number of people in the community.
Yeah.
Would it pay for a program to help recycle and update discarded
I honestly don't know the
devices?
answer to that question, Counselor. Brandon, do you? If you don't, that's okay. but-
Yeah, I don't, but I can reach out to my contact with the state and see if they could provide me more information on that, because I think that'd be interesting to look into.
Thank you very much, because if we have the highest ownership of devices, we probably have the highest turnover as well. And it'd be interesting to see if there's something we could do with that.
Yeah, and it strikes me, through you, Mayor, Councilor Cumby, that could be a suggestion on the Business Council's plan, like relending, reloaning, refurbishment programs. Yeah, and, when Brandon talked about the statistic that we have a lot of device access in this community, right? That didn't surprise me because we are a community of learners, right? Wyotech, the University of Wyoming, LCCC, and education, you really don't access education these days without device access. So that doesn't surprise me. It's probably a function of a lot of people working in academia or being engaged in learning through academia and Wyotech. And I assume Wyotech, I look at you, Councilor Newman, I assume Wyotech also, that's needed for students. I know it's a hands-on curriculum, but I assume there's also coursework that requires them to have devices and be able to access digital learning content.
So the hands-on stuff, I don't teach that. I teach the business class, and
Perfect. Yeah,
there
absolutely.
isn't a day that we don't use some sort of technology in there. So
There you go. So we think of the University of Wyoming, and clearly we believe that's a need there, but yeah, I assumed that it was similar at Wyotech as well. So anyway, we have a lot of device access, but that's a great suggestion, and let's make note, and maybe we can make that part of our recommendations. Okay, so public education, that second category, after intergovernmental collaboration and just trying to be a really strong partner to the state on behalf of our community and our county. The third category of where I think we can go next is actually an outgrowth of our economic development plan, our Thrive plan from 2020. The number one action step under Strategy 10 for broadband access was that we would, sorry, let me advance this. There you go, guys, is what you see here. Strategy 10 was increased broadband-related investments, and the number one action item was to form a Greater Laramie Broadband Coalition of public-private partners, anchor institutions, all of the sort of partners you've already heard us talk about in this presentation, and really tackle this as a collaborative effort, public-private partnership. We've not formed that coalition, as you know, but after seeing all the research, understanding where the federal allocations in the state are in building these programs to spend those monies, I think that first action step remains ripe, valuable, and needed, and I think we should take the initiative to go ahead and start trying to form that group and put all of our great minds and talent in Laramie together. So just a little bit more on that. So I would say that recommendation is not stale and is still relevant. And what we know just shores up the fact that forming something like this Greater Laramie Broadband Coalition, I took the effort of creating a little logo for it because it's exciting. Community connecting to the world. I don't know, they'll probably tell me that's really not interesting and boring. But this is kind of what it would look like, sort of 6 high-level elements. As I said, it'd be a coalition of agencies, not individuals. This would represent private providers, like maybe our ISP community, government agencies, anchor institutions like the school district, Ivinson Memorial Hospital, probably Chamber Business Alliance, downtown Main Street, representing our smaller business, and then some of our more larger corporate size entities. And so very broad-based. Then with that group pulled together, the second action item in the Thrive Plan, I also think still remains relevant based on what we know, and that was that this group would come together and kind of put together a local broadband master plan for what are the most important objectives. There's a lot you can do in this space. We could focus on workforce, we could focus on workforce development, we could focus on business recruitment, but having a real sort of prioritized plan for what are our highest level objectives, I think is important and still is as a relevant goal for that group to pursue. And we'd be looking at how do we support economic development, but also, as Brandon said, how do we support our population objectives over time? And to your question, Councilor Shumway, the plan noted that Laramie's growing, and we can grow sort of on accident, or we can grow purposefully. And we can grow purposefully by recruiting the kind of workers that we're recruiting, workers toward workforce, toward businesses or industry sectors that we desire, versus ones that happen on accident. Not that we don't want that too, but the plan talks about the kinds of industries we would like to see in Laramie, and then how we find workforce that will bring, industries like that here, how we educate those workforce. And so 50,000 is kind of it was an acceptance that we have grown at 1% to 2% per year steadily for 10, 20 years, that's likely to continue to happen, but it could kind of ramp up and catch us off guard, and so we need to be ready for it. So an acceptance of what's happening, and also in a way an aspirational number, because that level of population, it typically can fuel a pretty robust local economy. You have adequate workforce, you have all the things you need to recruit business. And that's an issue that we struggle with, right? We recruit business, but they have to have workers, and we have a low unemployment rate, and they have to have housing, and we have housing affordability issues even when we get the workers here. So it's all very synergistic in the plan, and the 50,000 population mark was just sort of an acceptance of that, and saying, well, let's just focus on that as a goal, that we can accommodate that, because we're probably going to get there anyway.
And City Manager, one thing that I recall, because I said it maybe 1,000 times, I felt like during this, like when we were discussing the plan fairly often, you weren't the only person, Councilor Shumway, sort of like the 50,000 number flagged for. One, I think, important caveat is that it is not talking about specifically in the city now, where we're at like 32,000 or something. It was sort of the city and its immediately adjacent county property, which was 38,000 or something. So when you look at it that way, you think 12,000 is much more attainable than if you imagine 20,000 more people, right? So
Yeah.
just as by way of a little extra info there.
Your Honor, we're growing at about 650 a year.
Good to know. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate that clarification, Mayor, and that was part of the conversation. Our plan is a City of Laramie plan, but we tried to look at the greater Laramie area, thus, this kind of language, greater Laramie. It sounds kind of strange since we're only 38,000 even in our greatness, but but we know that workforce, we know that business, we know that housing issues persist around the city of Laramie in the immediate county vicinity where we have a density of population. So,
Councilor Pierce.
Yeah, and I think too, having that partnership with the county, with the hospital and the university and all the other bigger employment entities in the state or in Albany County, I think when we do go for those funds, presenting a joint plan is going to be far more powerful, and I think also help eliminate that myth that exists when those funds end up in Wyoming and get distributed. So I think we need to really poke a hole in that pretty seriously, and I think this will really help not only in this effort, but just in, something simple like distribution of funds.
yeah, Councilor, I agree with you. And one thing you'll see in the Business Council report, if you go read through that, is it is mostly county level data. And so the county is going to be a critical partner here.
Right.
And we really do have a ring of density within probably 5 to 10 miles of the city limits as far as people living out there. So it would be probably short-sighted if we don't join forces with them.
Yeah, and hence the importance of that growth plan.
Yes.
We just passed, so,
Yeah, that's another good point.
yeah.
Mayor, you've got a...
Councilor Doherty, thanks.
And then there's our friends to the north. So maybe it should be Albany County Broadband Coalition.
Right, yeah. So I've covered the top two, the middle row there, with the group formed and them having kind of a local action plan, prioritized action plan in place, then that will position us to be more successful when we try to leverage federal funds that are passed through the state and other state programs that may exist. They also can be tasked with and responsible for helping craft educational materials around these broadband programs that we've talked to you about. So the city can carry the water for now, but ultimately they could be a really strong partner. And then this group can also help us to use public works projects to potentially increase broadband infrastructure where possible. We're already doing that to some degree, but there's opportunity areas there. And particularly if we are able to work with our large anchor institutions, you know as well as I do, they build and dig as much as the city does, if not more, right? You know, we've got YDOT and we've got the university, all of their construction underway, and some of it in our right-of-way, but not all of it in our rights-of-way. And so there's that idea. And then lastly, at the bottom there, there is a recommendation in our plan that coming out of getting the sort of broadband coalition into a high-functioning state, that coming out of that, a next step would be to consider maybe forming a regional entity for IT and tech support to assist users, lay users, individual persons. And the notion discussed there, I think, still has merit. What it envisioned loosely was maybe a Southeast Wyoming group that could support me when I'm at home and I can't get my printer to hook up or something like that, but kind of on-call IT support for individuals, right? Because we all have that at our jobs, and you can call IT and it's really fantastic, and then you get home and who do you call? And so something to help people to take up technology, easier to understand it better, and somewhere to call when they're stuck at the household or individual level. So those are kind of the next steps that we envision for these next 6 months. If you have other thoughts, ideas, suggestions, we're open to those. And before I give that to you, Council, I was going to let Brandon kind of wrap up because he's going to be our point person, really staying on top of upcoming deadlines with the intergovernmental collaboration piece, particularly with the Wyoming Business Council. So he can talk to you about that. And then we're happy to hear your thoughts about where we are going and if it's relevant.
Thank you. Yeah, so as we discussed, the draft plan has been released. That public comment period is open until August 17th. The BEAD plan has not yet been released. I believe last we discussed they had just released Connect Wyoming 2.0, which was a secondary version of the primary Connect Wyoming, which encompassed that map that they created. It encompassed the application process for previous grants. They're working on that process. This plan will include all of the application, the ways you apply, how they're going to use that funding, how, in more specifics, how it will work. I do believe that plan will be out shortly. And then finally, they will be finalizing the state plans later this year to go early next year. There will be that initial 20% fund dispersal from the federal government to state. And then from there will be a full dispersal of those funds upon the enactment of the plan and following a final proposal.
Great, thank you. Council members, any questions? Councilor Gabriel?
Thanks, Mayor. Brandon, would you comment on the private sector? And I'm thinking about digital access with Blue Peak and others recently that have been in our community. It seems like we're making some major strides in that area. And what your research is showing, I just was curious about Blue Peak, for instance, because they seem to be all over the place and adding some really valuable service.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor. So it's been kind of hard to get specific information on individual ISPs as far as what exactly they're doing. And that digital access portion, it does include ISPs, but that digital access portion specifically goes more towards the literacy and the affordability processes. I don't know exactly what that looks like as far as maybe like their ACP enrollment, whether they're enrolled in that program or not, whether they're doing low-cost options, if they're doing any kind of tech support or availability. I do know that, and this is something I did fail to mention that I probably should mention, some ISPs do also offer device discounts through that ACP program, even as far as cell phone providers. But as far as Blue Peak specifically, I can't give you an exact idea of how that's working.
City Manager, please.
Mayor, to your question, Councilor Gabriel, I was just looking, I think in late 21, we did a presentation for council. I'll try to find it and send it back out to you all, but it did address, I think, your question. And that was, what is the city doing, if anything, to enable more providers to come into the community? Then consumers have more options, right? They have various providers, various plans, various price points. And so we did give you guys a presentation presentation, we talked about the agreement that we had with Blue Peak to let them work in and around the rights of way, all of those things, and sort of green light their involvement into the community. Of course, they've been in front of you guys talking about that as well. We've also done work with, the name just flew out of my head. They're a local provider. We've done some work with them. We've let them house. They have a combination of terrestrial infrastructure and wired, or non-wired infrastructure. Oh, it just flew out of my head. That may be, yes, I think so. So we've worked with them to allow them to work in our rights of way and use some of our city facilities, and we've worked with other providers. That's just a couple examples. So there's a role for the city to play in bringing competition to town and more options for consumers, and we've been trying to do that as well. And we will continue to. And that kind of goes back to that slide that I just showed you, where Public Works, our city Public Works, can have a role to play in making it easier for providers to come in and consumers to have more choice or not. And we've been trying to go for the make it easier approach. But we could learn more as we go, and there may be new and other opportunities for that going forward. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I know there are some folks at UW that have a fair amount of expertise on internet via satellite, if I'm right, and it's a little bit of a stretch, and of course I didn't understand any of the conversation that I was listening to, but I think if I keep thinking, I think there might be some interesting opportunity with that as well. So let me send out some emails tomorrow.
Thank you, Councilor Pierce. Councilors, any other questions? I was curious if there's any, in this program, any benefit or prioritization for local or regional. We just spoke about a few that are regional providers. It occurs to me that some of these stipulations, sort of like the ACP requirements and maybe that like, device exchange or device discounts are going to be far easier for, sort of like a specific internet service provider monopoly to provide, because they can provide it with like just a fraction of a profit, right? Where a local business may really benefit more substantially from government assistance in some of these situations, and certainly I think our residents would find a far better experience talking to local or regional providers on the phone when they don't work. And as a young person who tech supports, to your point earlier, city manager, whose parents call to tech support all the time, I think that sort of local touch is really valuable. So Brendan, I didn't know if there was any sort of like incentive for local providers. I know there is for construction, capital projects, that sort of thing. I don't know if in this grant there is any incentive or prioritization.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. So in the listening session we attended at LCCC, that concern was raised. They did discuss how this could potentially benefit larger ISPs at the cost of potentially smaller local ISPs. I'm not sure they had any specific guideline laid out defining some sort of way they could prioritize those smaller ISPs. Again, I could reach out and provide all of these questions in an email to the state and make sure I can get this information to you guys in a timely fashion.
Great. Yeah, I sure appreciate that. And one other question I had, and I don't know that this necessarily would dovetail in any way with the last one, but would there be a benefit, even if this, because what we can see, I think, from this program is that there will be investment in broadband in the city of Laramie. You could reasonably expect some investment, and that would be in our right-of-ways. And I'm wondering, because we have some significant public works projects occurring now and in the coming years, if we could be a little forward-thinking with that and have some investment in conduit. I mean, we've seen how disruptive, not that I don't welcome fiber installation through Blue Peak, but it's disruptive in the right of way to somebody's home. And if we could be a little more proactive, and that could be installed, under a gutter or under the edge of a street or something, rather than retrofit it later, it seems like that might be a benefit And then certainly that gives, we can lease that space back to internet service providers later, but we would have the opportunity to say, here's conduit, go ahead and just pull your fiber through it.
Yes.
And then if if incentives aren't built into this program, maybe that's a place that we could leverage. It does dovetail, there you go. We could leverage maybe some of that conduit to sort of incentivize local opportunity. Sort of the big monopolies can do it themselves.
Yes, Mayor, that is part of the update I'm looking for. And I can't remember, I know Public Works implemented this a couple years ago, the conduit piece, right? We've been sort of dancing around it for a decade, right? And then finally just did it. I just don't know the specifics, so let me follow up on that for you.
Thank you. Council members, Councilor Richardson, please.
I also was curious, what sort of public outreach are we currently doing, or are we doing any public outreach on the ACP side of things? That'd be the first question, I guess.
We are not, and because we literally just learned about this like 60 days ago, but yeah, big opportunity area.
Great, excellent. And in thinking about that, so just thinking about those opportunities where we could share this information, I know that with people's power bills, if they have reduced costs, or working with even DFS when they send out their SNAP benefits, just my ideas.
Mayor, through you, Councilor Richardson, we did talk about even our own low-income utility bill assistance, or our city bill. It's not just utilities, but pushing information that way through ours, dovetailing on other agencies, interfaith, DFS, et cetera, and then just general public information also. So yeah, real opportunity there. My reaction was much like yours, Councilor Doherty, when I read that in the report. That was pretty amazing and clearly low-hanging fruit.
And if I could tag on to that, there is, the ACP website does provide pre-made media materials. So there is some material already created, able to be published through the ACP website. So there would be some, not personalized, but some basic information available as soon as we need it.
That's great, thank you. Council members, other questions? All right, we're going to turn it over to the public. I see Mr. Glass is in the waiting room. City Clerk? And Mr. Glass, when you're on, you will have 3 minutes. Welcome.
Honorable Mayor, members of council, can you hear me?
We sure can.
Thank you very much. I could probably give an hour-long presentation on this topic, but I'll try to condense it to 3 minutes. If I run over slightly, please forgive me. I'm going to try to be as brief as I can. I have spent 31 years running Lariat, which is the world's first wireless ISP. That's a first for Laramie and for Wyoming. And over my shoulder, you can see a picture of me on a radio tower putting up radio gear. When we started here in Laramie, you could not get cable modem service. You couldn't get DSL here. All you could do was use dial-up modems, and we were doing megabit service before people were off of dial-up. We pioneered telemedicine. We were the first ISP in Laramie to transmit CAT scans to radiologists so that they could diagnose things remotely. Since that time, of course, copycats from out of town and other states have flooded in, and there are now a lot of providers doing what we do. And the good news is there is no location within the city of Laramie, within our city limits, that is considered unserved according to the federal criteria. So we're not eligible for the BEAD program because of this. There might be some other things we can leverage, but we're not eligible for the BEAD funding because we have multiple providers who can provide multiple gigabits of data to anyone here in town. Now, my company does deliver as much high-quality bandwidth as anyone needs throughout the service area, and we go far beyond Laramie. We go as far as 35 miles beyond the city limits. And again, there's plentiful competition, so we have to keep up. We've stayed ahead by developing our own unique systems and software, and by deploying the latest microwave technology, such as this little microwave dish, which will connect you to the internet as fast as a gigabit. We can attach this to the wall of your house house and have you going in a couple of hours. Now, connectivity here in Laramie is also pretty affordable. My ISP, Lariat, enrolled in the ACP, and we got only one taker, even after we advertised it heavily. People didn't feel they needed a subsidy because there was already aggressive competition and there was already pretty economical pricing. So while the ACP may have some limited utility, it isn't that essential here. At least we didn't see much demand for it. As for tech support, we provide 24/7/365 tech support for our customers, even when the product that someone is having trouble with is not ours. We do a great deal of tech support on Christmas morning when people get toys. They want to connect to the internet and they're not sure how. We also already recycle devices. Here's an example. This is a remanufactured internet router, which we went ahead and remanufactured. We put in a superior operating system and a new power supply, and it's going out to the home of a university professor tomorrow. So we're actively involved in doing that as well. Microwave internet, such as what we provide, continues to be the most economical way to serve sparsely populated areas such as rural Albany County, and it's more serviceable and it's more expandable. It's far better than satellite service because the data doesn't have to travel as far to get to the access point and get to the internet. And we compete very well with Starlink. We have people who've tried Starlink and come back to us. I was out in the county today installing an internet upgrade for a physician who practices here in Laramie, and she's very happy with it because it allows her to deal with her records and keep in touch with everything, even from far outside of town. Now, the Wyoming Business Council, unfortunately, isn't really in touch with all of this. They just don't deal directly with internet users the way we do, and unfortunately, some of their policies are actually bad for Wyoming and bad for cities such as Laramie. Among other things, they're undermining local Wyoming providers by setting some arbitrary requirements on their programs, such as requiring letters of credit that only large corporations from outside the state can meet. We need to make sure that we aren't actually harmed by the Business Council's activities. Anyway, I see I'm right.
Please wrap up your comments.
I think you did.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. If you'd like to know more, please contact me. I'd be delighted to serve as a resource and make sure that we do what's actually necessary to improve service in Laramie.
Thank you, Mr. Glass. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak to the council on this item? Welcome.
Mayor Harrington and City Council, and my comment will be kind of more directed for the city manager and for you. I'm speaking on behalf of a person who has just recently tried to help her mother, my mother, apply for the discounted rates that they're talking about. So I'm going to address your committee that you're looking at putting together, the ACP. One of the reasons that I can tell you that a lot of people may not want to apply or have had an experience in applying. My mother does not live in the state of Wyoming. She does live in a rural state, but the process was arduous. She's 81 years old, and an 81-year-old cannot fill out their forms. It is ridiculous to do. You have to upload a lot of documents. Your internet service provider will not help you with that. So I would suggest that as part of support or whatever, that any of the agencies like Epson Center or Interfaith, that they have a specific person who could kind of help coach. And I know you're dealing now looking at people's personal information, which we all know isn't good, but hopefully these are trusted members of our community that can assist in that. The response time was 120 days, and the response was no. She's 81 years old on a limited fixed income, under the poverty line, but not under the poverty line enough by, I don't know, $12. And Yeah, I know, it's crazy. And so, but it took 120 days just to get a no after it took us almost 4 hours to upload and fill out the documentation. So there's just, and some of that we can't help because it is the federal government offering these funds, but it is from a user standpoint, and I'm talking just strictly as a user standpoint, if you have never had to do this, and I know how hard it must be for people to get assistance for anything that really need it. And it's just, I'm still working on another project for her that has been almost a year. So it's just a comment that I wanted to direct for awareness. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We sure appreciate that. And City Manager, that may get to the point of, the emergency rental assistance program had a pretty great rollout, I think, for, though slow at the beginning, was really effective in, and so that came from the state, right? So that might be a great mirroring process because they really embedded in the community with local providers like Interfaith and organizations like that to directly assist folks in qualifying for that and filling out those applications. Because I think the time tax is real in a lot of these things. And this may just be, to Mr. Glass's point, people may not sign up. And that may just be because it's too hard. So maybe we can convey that in some way as well to see if we can get better adoption locally.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Councilor Shumway, please.
Thank you, Mayor. You referred to ERAP, Emergency Rental Assistance Program. That ended June 30th, and that was partially administered through Interfaith. I serve on their board. They have downsized now from 6 staff to 3 staff. They are not going to be available to help with tech support, period. Now, the Senior Center may, and there's a lot of volunteers that may go there, but I think that would be our best option is to look there, or maybe to the library for people that would volunteer their time. This is going to be a very complicated thing for the elderly. I'm going to talk to AARP and see if they have any ideas for assistance in this.
Thank you, Councilor. That's all great. Councilors, any other? I suppose I got us astray there, but we are still with the public, so I'm going to circle back. Just make sure there's no other members of the public that would like to speak to the council. Mr. Montoya, please come forward. And my apologies for making you wait.
Paul Montoya, Mr. Mayor, City Council. That last speaker was very articulate. I was very impressed with her. With all due respect, I may say, and I think Commissioner Gabriel might have touched on this may be a solution looking for a problem. I don't think, I'm glad the city is aware the ACP program is something we need to promote and encourage people to partake in. As far as internet service providing here in the Laramie and even Albany County for the most part, since we did live outside in a rural area before moving into the city, is really not a big issue. 5 years ago, internet here in Laramie itself was provided by CenturyLink, Spectrum Broadband, and Lariat, Mr. Glass's company. Those were the 3. That was a real problem because prices were quite high during that period. Since then, Visionary Broadband, another microwave company that competes with Mr. Glass, and also VistaBeam out of Scottsbluff have come to town. And then besides that, as Commissioner Gabriel was pointing out, Blue Peak is installing gigabit fiber throughout all of Laramie. The map is on their website if you'd like to see what their plans are. They're mainly working north of Reynolds right now. They may have already communicated that to City Council, but their plans are to really equip all of Laramie. They're doing most of their work with boring under streets, so it's not, it is a disruption as you've mentioned, Mr. Mayor, but it's not the disruption of digging up streets. So with a lot of their boring process, it's not terribly complicated. We also do have Starlink, which Mr. Glass mentioned. It works very well in rural areas. I used it out near Ames Monument when it first came out. It's very good. The problem is right now it's still fairly expensive. For about a half a gigabit, you're talking somewhere between $100 and $120 a month, and you're talking upfront equipment of about $600 a month. This is Elon Musk's company. He has said in the past that as he gets more people on this, he will begin to lower prices. We'll have to see how that happens. Blue Peak will be a gigabit for $50 a month. Because of this competition, I've been getting cards in the mail from Spectrum offering $39 a month for 300 megabit, almost a half a gigabit speed. These are all exceeding what most people need day to day. Besides that, you have to remember that the cell carriers are also providing high speed. I just tested T-Mobile's system. I was getting a half a gigabit for $50 a month through cellular data, and it's very reliable too. So I just wanted to kind of let you know that it's not as bad as you might think for internet here in Laramie. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Montoya. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak to the council? Raise your hand if you're on Zoom. All right, seeing none, we will close the public comment period. Council, back to you all for any comments. Anything else? Okay. All right, council members, we're going to, unless there's anything else from staff, we're going to go ahead and close that work session. Okay, great. Council, we're going to move on to our next work session, which is the 5th Tuesday ward meetings. And City Manager, I'm going to turn that over to you, I think. I have.
No, that's okay.
I'm not sure. I suspect the point here is that council should discuss what we want to do with the ward meetings.
That's my understanding of the work session, council, and I'm happy to support you in that. I can share some of my observations, but you've been at those meetings as well. And those observations are mine attending, but also my staff attends, and we've kept some loose statistics on attendance and participation. So however I can help, please let me know. But ultimately, as you know, it's council's decision on how to use Fifth Tuesdays or not. So
Okay,
and
thank you, City Manager.
Whatever you need.
Council members, any thoughts off the top? Councilor Gabriel? Reaching for your mic, so I'm
Sure,
calling on you.
thanks, Mayor. At this point, since we have public comment at all of our meetings, before and after, and we've had a limited amount in Ward 3 at the fire station over my 7 years, almost 7 years now. Maybe a couple of people, maybe 4 people. Last time, I think there was one on Zoom. In my personal opinion, I don't think it's necessary, but that's Ward 3. And of course, they have access to us all during the week and at public meetings. And so I'm a little hesitant, but I'll support whatever the council wants to do. I just don't see a lot of interest in coming to another meeting on a Fifth Tuesday.
Okay. Before we circle around, City Clerk, what's the cost of a Fifth Tuesday meeting? Because council gets paid for the Fifth Tuesday, and then the staff member?
No,
we don't get paid? Okay, great.
So, Mayor, without doing a calculation, you have staff time, because we do have one staff member go to each meeting to be able to answer questions and be available to open and close the locations and things like that. And then we have our advertisement for the ward meetings. So those are the costs that are associated.
Great. So that's significantly less than I had in my mind as council members getting paid. Councilor Newman, and then to you, Councilor Shumway.
So I've talking to people in my ward, they support the meetings, but then the funny part is when I come to them, nobody shows up. The public comment before the meetings and at the end of them, I think, is sufficient enough to continue, and then maybe we have a work session on this, if more people get involved in public comment parts to where maybe we need to bring them back. But for now, if we were going to vote on this, and obviously we're not, but I would probably vote not to keep them, just to save, a little bit of money that we put into these. That's probably my comment for now.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Shumway.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think I agree with Councilor Gabriel and Councilor Newman. They have not been effective. And I also thought about this. We may not have given a very good product for the community to be invited to. I see what happens with our congressmen. They come for what's called town halls, and they have, they fill the room. And then they do a presentation where they go over the hot issues that they're working on, and then they ask for, back and forth and answer questions. We have never gone to these fifth Tuesday meetings with anything prepared other than just to listen. And I don't see the state coming in with their state legislators or senators or representatives coming in to do anything even similar to what town halls look like. So I'm not sure that we're ready for the big time, and I'm not sure that we would encourage more than 2 or 3 people to come to Ward 3. Now, Ward 1 seems to, they're popular group of people, but I don't know how to make this to where it is valuable unless we come up with a different formula than what we have.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Pierce.
Yeah, thanks. When we started this a number of years ago, I was very supportive because I don't know how many years, I think, Joe, how many years has it been?
At least 10.
Has it been that long? I mean, it's been a while. Anyway, they never were well attended. I think it was of the best of intentions to listen to the community and be dispersed in terms of our wards that particular evening. But having spent one night at the farmer's market, I think, truly, I think when we were talking about recycling, I think our best approach truly is either a farmer's market or Freedom Has a Birthday or whatever the event already happens to be, and pick a topic. There are a lot of things that we could get out there and dispense information about, right? This recycling thing is huge. We learned that relatively quickly. There are just events that we could all be attending, 3 people here, 3 people there, whatever it happens to be throughout the course of the year. I think that's what we do. And even though the one night I was there for the recycling, nobody talked to me about the rental ordinance or anything, but or any other topic other than recycle. But I think we could, we were there to have a discussion, right? So somebody could have, said, hey, Jane, what do you think about, XYZ or whatever it happens to be. So I think that's what we do. I think we just take our time and maybe have another work session or talk about just ways to get out there during events, right? I think that's what we need to do. And
Great.
And let the Fifth Tuesday thing just go. Because we truly do want to listen. We truly do want to share information. It's just, how do we get that time to connect with folks face to face? And I think the pandemic threw us into a bit of a wonky time too, obviously. So.
Thank you, Councilor Pierce. Vice Mayor, and then to you, Councilor O'Doherty.
Councilor Pierce, I agree with you. I have had very little communication with the public at our Fifth Tuesday meetings, the best being the last Ward 1. We did have some good and lively discussion, but I will say even that didn't match a day at Freedom Has a Birthday or going down to the farmer's market, putting my name tag on, and just walking around, talking to people and engaging and finding out on the street what the issues are. And we've been to 2 festivals last year, 2 festivals this year, and we can interact with 50, 100 more people. And we've had them do comment boards and compiled that information. And I just think we each serve 4 meetings a week, on council. We serve on multiple commissions and boards and committees, and we get out there to these public events, and I think those public events really offer an opportunity to connect much better than the fifth Tuesday.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilor Doherty and then Councilor Richardson.
I was going to say the same thing. I had more conversations with people at our booths. And the nice thing about that is if a person is on Zoom or something, then they're very public. And people might not want to be out there, Joe Public, and now everybody knows my opinion. They may want to just talk to me personally. And so, or it's something that's a very personal issue, like some housing things that came up and things about disabilities. And so, yeah, I agree that a booth, and then I think that we have specific kind of town hall things about specific issues. Like I would love to get the public that are interested in having bike boulevards just have a meeting where they get to talk to us. That it's not, so it doesn't mean our staff has to provide all this stuff. It's just the public gets to voice their ideas or opinions about things. And so you could love to have something about composting. How can we increase composting in Laramie? Things like that, and have a specific topic. I don't know that anybody would show up. I know for bike boulevards they would. So if we do specific topics and then open it up to the public for comments, I think that would be more productive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Doherty. Councilor Pierce, I'm going to go to Councilor Richardson and then back to you if that's okay.
So I was going to say, thanks, Mayor. I was first going to say that I really appreciated the turnout at the Ward 1 meeting, and it made me feel like it was valuable because we had folks there. But as I'm listening to this, I'm also realizing those are the folks who are already engaged and coming to talk to us and doing these things already. And so and I will also say I was at Freedom Has a Birthday, and the conversations that we had that just kind of came to fruition just in a more kind of relaxed way were really beneficial. So I could really probably go both ways. I will say if we do decide to do more of these booths and that sort of thing, I'd love to have, we're focused right now on recycling, but have it a little more structured. Could there be something that is hanging there that talks about the big points that we are considering as city council right now, so people can see them and then voice their opinion, so that we're sharing more than just one topic and hopefully garnering some more discussion.
Thank you, Councilor Richardson. Councilor Pierce, then Councilor Newman.
Yeah, just really quick. I think we need to take some sort of or pay close attention to not doing this are folks that are running for election or re-election. So if we commit that this has nothing to do with anything occurring during election season or having that as a topic that's off limits, right? Because we don't want to go sideways during the.
Councilor, do you mean people shouldn't be campaigning? Council members should not be campaigning?
That's what I
these
tried
events?
to say,
Okay.
yes.
I would agree with you. Councilor Newman, please.
I would agree too. If you're going to campaign, you should get your own booth, not use the city's money. And I also think, so it's nice. I walked around farmers market just with a name badge on and talk to some people too. And maybe some of these farmers markets, we don't have a topic at all. And we have a sign that says, come talk to your council members, right? And because I think like picking the recycling, if somebody's not super passionate about it, they're not going to stop at the booth. But if we have something else that says, come ask us a question, maybe they might stop. And that could start some of that conversations as well. Instead of, a strict topic too. So, anyways.
Great idea. Councilor Doherty.
I think one thing we have to be careful of is when people ask us a question that we have to make sure we're giving accurate information, because I have to tell you, I've been at board meetings where some inaccurate information went out, and if we didn't have staff there to say, oh, actually it's this, then So, and I'm not just saying counselors, but, the public could say something, you're a counselor, you don't know if that's the case, and then you find out later when the person is long gone, like, oh, that's not how it works, So, so I guess we have to make sure that we're humble and say, can I get back to you on that? Here's my card or something, so that we're not causing more, and also keep track of what people ask us so that then the city can put that on social media. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Doherty. Yeah, Councilor Richardson, then Councilor Gabriel.
One more follow-up to the idea of, again, I really like being at these events, but we also have lulls in the year where, winter is dark and cold and we're not outside at a farmer's market. So making sure that there are opportunities, if there, maybe there is a fifth Friday or fifth Tuesday, whatever day we meet. It's been a week.
I feel that.
And it's only Tuesday. To have that opportunity to make sure then that it's happening year-round. So maybe where there are opportunities in certain months, we take advantage of those, but when there aren't, we think about continuing to have.
Councilor Gabriel.
When Councilor Shumway was mayor, he brought up the point on some of the lack of participation in these fifth Tuesday meetings. Maybe, I think, Joe, you said this, the council is doing something right. We're making the right decisions, and people are satisfied with the performance of city council. And I remember when you were the mayor, Joe, you brought up the point.
That was a hopeful wish, but
I remember that distinctly,
Well, under Joe's leadership, we probably were doing some things pretty right.
That's all.
Councilor Newman, and then Councilor Shumway for a rebuttal.
I think he was poking fun.
Something that came to me is, so like the winter months, is that something that we could use social media even more and do some polls on social media on some hot topics for the public, to where now we could come in if we had to do a work session on like a fifth Tuesday, we would have a structure and have a presentation, maybe like minor leagues, I'm thinking, not big leagues, but something like that, to where we could use some of the stuff that's already at our fingertips a little better when it comes to that.
Thank you, Councilor. Yeah, please, City Manager, go ahead.
Mayor, I just have to jump in and on that note, if I could just remind the council that we have secured the other service available through Zen City on your urging. We need to explore it. And so I think that that's a relevant point. We will have some surveying abilities to do sort of spot surveys on timely issues that, maybe are an issue in January, but not an issue in June. Or so we're learning about that right now. But I think that's a well-made point and may give you some tools to get public input and sentiment, engage it that you haven't had previously.
Thank you, City Manager. Councilor Shumway.
thank you, Your Honor. I don't want to have a rebuttal because I'm not sure what that was all about. Well, anyway, here's the thought. I think that there has been some very positive benefits from having coffee with a cop or ride with a cop. Mm-hmm. I think that it gives people opportunity to just do one-on-one. I think with our public comments, there's the biggest fault with that is there's no discussion, and we cannot have a discussion. I like the idea of, when we walk during campaigns, then we get to interact with the public, and we hear so much stuff, but again, that's that has its problems, which has been pointed out. Here's one idea that we may explore. I love the idea of Freedom Has a Birthday and also Farmers Market. Another place where a lot of good input comes from is from the seniors in our community. And they have I think luncheons almost every day. And if we did a thing where more than one council member would go there to do what we maybe call dine and whine. You know, we dine and they complain. I think we need two, because otherwise we're going to be promising, you know, to fix their gutters and sidewalks and things like that. But I would like to explore at least doing something that has, you know, an option for the public to say, oh, if I really want to go see a city council members, I can go on the, you know, whichever day that we pick to go to the senior center where we can sit, and it's open to everyone, I think. You don't have to be older to do that, and we could, you know.
Like two people that don't qualify.
Yeah. So anyway, I think I would.
He feels like
I would like to explore something so that we just don't drop everything, you know. I thought about having the 15 minutes we gave up, you know, at the beginning of the meeting for open discussion, but that defeats the purpose. So I didn't say that.
Yeah, Counselor, I think that informal part is, it is important, because I keep finding for me that, like, the park is becoming my best exchange of information, because my daughter plays with strangers, and so I talk to random parents now. And so if it comes up that I'm on the council, they have something to say, well, you know, and it's, to Counselor Gabriel's point, like, most of the time people are like, yeah, I don't really know what you're up to, but it seems like it's fine. But on occasion, people do have things that I wouldn't otherwise know about. So, yeah, I think finding those, I think that what we need to figure out is how to, like, sort of formalize the informality, like how to find our way to places. I think this dine and wine idea is excellent. All right. Any other? Yeah, I think that's great. Vice Mayor?
I think there have been some great ideas from all of you, and I like them. And I think they're innovative, and I hope we'll pursue them.
Great. Any other council members have any thoughts on this? Okay, we're going to go to the public. If any member of the public has a comment here, we'd sure take it. Please come forward, Mr. Montoya.
Alderman Montoya, Mr. Mayor.
Please.
City Council, to show you what a wonderful husband I am.
You are a romantic man.
That's sad. Wow.
I don't know, I'm going to need to talk to her.
This may be the last time you see her with me. I don't know. This was an important topic, I think, for both of us, because we have attended the Fifth Tuesday meetings, and I think they've been beneficial for a number of reasons. Now, we did miss one. We canceled one this year, which I know you all are aware of. The last one we had was, what, February? Was that the last one we actually had? And some of you mentioned there was a great turnout for Ward 1 and some good discussion, and we were part of that, and that was a lot of fun. I love the ideas of the one-on-one interaction. Freedom has a birthday, Brewfest. I mean, there's a lot of places you guys could really reach out, but they are one-on-one. And I think one of the things that we get a lot of value out of when we have commissioners and the public is I learned as much from the people that were at that Ward 1 meeting that were non-council people as I did from the council people. And you lose that with the one-on-one communication. Wine and dine would be fabulous, but you're not getting to go to everybody's wine and dine, so you don't get that input, I don't think. The public comment period, was pointed out by you, Commissioner Shumway, is valuable, but the problem is we don't get that interaction that we do at a public meeting. One thing I would really recommend you consider before you totally cancel the Tuesday meetings is maybe consider not making them ward meetings, but making it an open council discussion, maybe a work session where the public is actually the eighth member, where we can actually have dialogue and discussion with you as council. It's a little scary on your part because you don't know what, airport topics can come up and things like that. Maybe Commissioner O'Doherty recommended maybe a single topic or maybe do one or two topics. I would make it not ward meetings. Quite honestly, most of the people I talk to in the public say, I don't even know what ward I'm in. And if we're going to involve people, I think we need to involve people from the standpoint of what the city is doing at a given period of time. Projects like the Bike Boulevard. I talked to Commissioner O'Doherty the other day, saying, what the hell are bike boulevards? And it's wonderful. I'd love to see us go that direction. But I think we need to consider doing it as a group. So one thing I would consider is maybe seen as maybe an experiment, and we'll do our best to promote it on the public side, is just do an open public forum council meeting. So that would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Mr. Montoya. Any other members of the public wish to speak? And happy anniversary to you both. It's an honor to have you both here tonight. That's great. Any other members of the public? It does not have to be your anniversary. Okay, we will close the public comment period. Council, anything? Oh, please. Please. Welcome, Chris.
Hi, Chris Stratton, Laramie 24/7. I would love to see an open council meeting if you could do it on the 5th Friday. I think that would be beneficial because you do have the Zoom capabilities, you have an absolute open council, and you would also have everybody here that could say, no, no, no. This isn't how we're going, or this is that. If it was just open, I think that would be beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, be tech support for sure. Any other members of the public wish to speak to the council on this work session? Okay. Council, any other thoughts before we close the work session?
Yes.
Please, Councilor Newman.
How hard would it be to set up the 5th Tuesday as a work session instead of the ward meetings?
So
I would have some, just as the person who's going to have to run the meeting, I might need a minute to just like sort of mentally prepare for how that's going to go, Counselor, just to be like very candid with you. To think about like how this process could function. Like, I don't want to provide sort of like a megaphone to one part of the public and then lose the other part because they're like, no, I'm not going to that. That's people just screamed the whole time, or like a person just screamed the whole time. And so we would have to have, I think it's going to be a real challenge to figure out how to like keep that informal. Yeah, so we'll have to figure out that structure. So I don't feel prepared to do it this 5th Tuesday.
No, not at all. It's just, no, not at all.
You gave me like a pang of anxiety.
No, not at all. Just like going forward after we come up with a structure, right?
Yeah.
How hard it would be to switch those. I don't want to do it now. I don't want to yell at either.
Great.
So, Mayor.
Yeah, city clerk.
So in order for the council to hold another work session, it's like any other additional work session, we notice the public in the paper. So we have the publication cost, and then we have the council wages in addition to normal, so.
And city clerk, we would have to notice the agenda as well, correct?
So special meetings do require notice of specific items. With these being work sessions, we do notice that to the public through our agendas being posted,
Okay, but there's no requirement for us to sort of like notice that in the boomerang or something, other than that there's a meeting happening?
Yeah, if we're not taking formal action, anytime we take formal action, we have to designate that on that special meeting.
Great.
Exactly what action we're taking that night.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Pierce.
Yeah, if I could throw another thought in, I think we really rely on our amazing city staff, right? And our directors and our city manager of all activities of our city, and they are vast, right? So in this format, that more formal format. And I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but I'm just saying it could get a little complicated, right? Because the variety of questions could really be a little broad, and I'd hate to see our 8 or 9 directors of the various departments, or however many we have, Janine, help me out, but, being here to help guide and really inform us, because we don't do the day-to-day. We don't know, when is the pothole guy going to get over to, 30th and whatever. So I'm not sure about the potential success of something like that.
City Clerk and then Vice Mayor.
Mayor, I was just thinking, one thing for the council to consider as well is whether the council would like to broadcast those additional work sessions or not, because that could be an additional cost there too. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Vice Mayor.
And just kind of commenting off of Councilor Pierce, if we had an open town hall type of meeting, it does seem that we would need the directors and administrators of each department to be here. Because as Councilor O'Doherty pointed out, and myself having been one who mistakenly distributed misinformation and had to be corrected in a meeting, questions could be asked that we would need the directors. So it may not be that a town meeting could be every 5th Tuesday, but rather that twice a year, and it would really require the directors to be here and for us to facilitate that. It could be, so.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Yeah, Council, I have a little bit of apprehension about the sort of free-for-all work session idea. That I guess I'll just err, because I think, because I don't know what else to do with it, but part of me feels, as I have always served in Ward 1, so I have frequented the highest participation ward meetings since I started on council, and they are almost always the highest attendance. And I think in a lot of ways it is because we are elected and because we serve in the role we do, it makes a lot of sense for us to be at those meetings, or to participate in sort of that role. But our staff isn't elected, and so I think in a lot of ways that's not like the role that they take on. They take on a role of public service, certainly, but they report to the city manager, who reports to us, right? So there's sort of like a hierarchy that happens, but we are directly accountable to the public, and so in my opinion, it makes a lot of sense for us to be directly having these conversations. And then the other piece is, somebody mentioned to me in 2020, when our meetings were just wild and pretty stressful, that they were watching and coming to our meetings because they, quote, wanted to see the train wreck. And it was because our meetings were so challenging. And I worry about building that environment into our work sessions. So that's why I had to pause and think, no, I need to think about this for a while. Because I can see the value. I can see why this might be really meaningful, but I can also see it going entirely the wrong direction and us just building a sort of tinderbox inadvertently, because we all want to do well, right? We commit our sort of free time to this in a lot of ways. I don't want us to sort of do that in vain. So I don't know. I don't feel ready to do a work session sort of format. If those were the options, I would choose the 5th Tuesday every time over the work session. But I'm not sure those are the only two options. Councilor Shumway?
Your Honor, I agree. I don't know if you follow, all the goings on, but we had a school superintendent resign this past week because there is so much animosity that comes when there is a huge controversial issue that comes up. We haven't dealt with that yet this year with this council here. We did deal with that in years past, and it's very difficult to keep it from becoming, as you said, very personal and very, a negative approach to. We have a responsibility to do the city business of the city, but we also have a responsibility to listen to all of the citizens in the city of Laramie. I don't know how we do that unless we make ourselves available to have that one-on-one small group discussion. But if we want to televise and we want to make this available for those that come that have an axe to grind, or that are upset with a certain department or upset with a certain person in this city staff or whatever, they'll come and we will have those meetings. I talk to almost all of the not all, quite a few of the mayors and city councils throughout the state through WHAM. And they say every one of them have gadflies. These are people that come that love to make city councils and mayors and city managers and police chiefs and things like that feel very uncomfortable and very marginalized. And I don't want to get into the situation where we do that, but I don't want to say we're not going to listen. So I like the idea that we have public comment where we gather these things, but maybe we need to have an outlet where we can say we're going to gather this information, and then we're going to answer their questions either on our website or else with just somehow we've got to say, we're going to be listening, but we're also going to, take seriously everyone's concern. If not, then it becomes boisterous. The loudest voice gets the most attention. So I agree with you, though. If we open this up, it may start out very quiet, but when it becomes difficult, it'll be like school boards across the nation, to where they're saying we have to stop this kind of attacks on individuals that have volunteered to serve within the community. I think we all need to realize, and we all realize this, you have to have tough skins to be a public servant. And if you're not ready for that, you're not ready to be on a city council or a county commission or a school board. But what we have to do is find a way in which we can communicate and respond. And so we've got to find that, where that is and what it works. And I think we'll probably find a lot of things that won't work, but I think we can find something that will.
Yeah, Councilor Shumway, that's a really great point about the question and answer opportunity, not like somebody, not sort of like the direct exchange, right? But like people could deliver questions that we could work with staff to provide accurate and sort of timely answers to. Because when you were talking, it occurred to me that somebody may say, well, I don't know why half my house has to be stone when I build a new house, right? Where do they take that complaint? Like where do they ask that question? Why? And so I think of that on one end, that there are probably reasonable questions. And then on the other end, I think about it in regards to, we open the floor to public comment twice every meeting and then on every item. And it is not uncommon for us to just have sort of a few public comments, right? Like these people have opportunities and there is some threshold, right? They have to show up or get on Zoom. And it is uncomfortable to speak to the council. Like there is sort of a dynamic part of it, but there's opportunities. Or you can call or email us or text us, or we're accessible people. But I think you're right. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Find some way to answer questions. Councilor Richardson.
I guess I would just say, though, we're accessible if you know how to get a hold of us. Right? There's so much of the population who doesn't know how to get a hold of us, who doesn't know where to start. Sometimes I don't know where to start. The number of questions I send to people who are not the right people, but who eventually get me there, I can't even count. And I also think that sometimes those voices who are the loudest, who are the most obnoxious, who you just are like, oh my gosh, don't necessarily feel like they're being heard. So ensuring that we provide a space for people to be able to have that back and forth in those conversations and not say something to us and we're all just staring back at them and not being able to respond is still pretty important.
Thank you, Counselor. Anyone else? All right. Council, I think this conversation is, it's tough because I think all of us really want to be more accessible. We want more public participation. And, I think there's some great ideas. I mean, to the Vice Mayor's point, I hope we do some of these ideas. We'll need to figure out who's going to do them and who's going to put them together, right? Like the farmer's market thing wouldn't be happening without Councilor Doherty's extra effort on it. And it takes that, right? Like one of us is going to have to spearhead this thing and sort of show up to the thing all the time. Somebody has to be that core person. So as I'm speaking, I'm thinking like, oh, that's probably you, idiot. And so maybe it is. So stay tuned. But I think on the other end, I think it comes from a good place from the council, and I don't know how to get more public participation, but there is a way, right? There's a way to sort of like meet people where they are, to go to the senior center to do that sort of thing. So I think I feel favorable to moving past the fifth Tuesdays and try to really do what the spirit of the fifth Tuesdays was, which was to reach out to the public more informally and more accessibly. So I think we can all leave at least today with actionable, like start doing this in your life, tell people you're on the council and see what they say to you. Because I think also nobody knows who their council members are, right? Like people are surprised when you say you're on the council. They're like, oh, cool. I don't know anyone on the council. And that's fine, right? Like that's okay. It's part of the joy of this job, I think, sometimes. But I think if we're all pretty forthright with that and see what we're hearing in the public, and then maybe we'll start working in these more formally informal processes. City Clerk?
So Mayor, if I could just summarize from a staff standpoint.
Please.
The direction that I'm hearing from the council is that for this coming fifth Tuesday, we would cancel that one and not schedule them on a regular basis until it's later determined. But look for additional community events that we can have booths at for the council.
Yes.
Okay.
Councilor Pierce, is that?
Yeah, not on that issue. I'm just having another thought related to our youth council, as well as Councilor Richardson's comment related to civic engagement. And, truly, people don't know, which is surprising to me, because as a kid, when I grew up, the whole system was pounded into my psyche. You go here, you do this, you do that, right? But in a lot of homes, I guess I was unusual in that upbringing. I didn't really realize that, but I was. And I think if we start with the youth council and talk to them about civic engagement and having them talk to their friends about civic engagement, and we can get into the schools, and we oftentimes do get invited into the schools for, different things. I think that's where we start. I mean, I don't know, just on a completely kind of different, but the same, I guess, topic. But yeah, I think we ask that youth council for advice.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Like, how did you get here? Because, maybe we know how one of them got here, but I don't know how the others showed up.
Thank you, Councilor Pierce. Council, any other thoughts before we close the work session? Okay. City Clerk, I think you had it right on. I think that's correct. Okay, we're going to close that work session. And then Council, we're going to move on to updates and comments. And I'm going to start with Councilor Somerville.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any updates or comments this evening.
Okay, great. Councilor Doherty.
We had the Environmental Advisory Committee meet, and Corinne Sheska, the the grad student from the Hobbs School presented a draft of the emissions reduction plan, and so it's in the minutes for the Environmental Advisory Committee, if you want to look at that. And one thing that almost everybody on the committee brought up, that they felt like the plan didn't address the elephant in the emissions, and that's our landfill. And partly that's because our landfill brings in more waste than just Laramie, and so part of the idea was we're trying to concentrate on what Laramie can, like our part of the pie. But several people on the Environmental Advisory Commission said, but that's where most of the emissions are coming from. So we're going to look into other things, and composting is big on the list. Like, can we figure out community composting? And so anyway, that's that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Doherty. Councilor Shumway. Councilor Pierce.
I'm good, thanks.
Okay, Councilor Richardson and I attended that Congressional Staffers Breakfast yesterday. Feels like a long time ago, but yesterday morning. And it was really insightful. It was largely the presentation was largely dealing with golden eagles and their sort of like mortality rates and relationships to wind farms. But it was very interesting. It's, I don't expect a wind farm to come before the city council, but I think as elected officials, it's good to know about that specific bird and its relationship to windmills, because it is unique in comparison. And then one other thing, just by way of a comment, Council, a few boards and commissions have reached out to me about council members not attending. And so just as a reminder, I know we're here talking about how we're going to spend all of our free time meeting with the public, but just so, acknowledging that we don't have any bandwidth, if you can't make a meeting, just ask and see if somebody else can make it for you. And if you sort of like can't make it consistently, bring it to me and I will try to find somebody to take over. And that's all I have for you. Oh, and I should say the Civil Service Commission met and sort of went through the sort of routine processes, but not much by way of updates for you there. Vice Mayor?
I have nothing at this time.
Councilor Newman?
Also nothing.
Councilor Richardson?
Same.
Councilor Gabriel?
Parks, Tree, and Rec Board is off for the summer. Tourism Board did not have a quorum for the July meeting, so we didn't meet. And the Railroad Depot Board meeting is coming up Thursday, which I will attend.
Great, thank you. All right, Council, on to the agenda review. It's a short agenda. One thing that I have heard from a few folks, City Clerk, is that 9G, and the City Manager and I talked about this, moving 9G onto our regular agenda, which is the Student Resource Officer agreement with, if you all read some of the reporting, I think it's worth us having a conversation about, and not just leaving it on consent, because it does seem to be newsworthy for sure, and a topic of conversation amongst another governmental board. So that one I think we should move to the regular agenda, but council members, is there anything else you have on the consent agenda? Okay. Anything on the regular agenda that you have questions about or concerns? City Manager, anything from your world? Just note the executive session, Council. So we will do our best to get through it in a timely fashion, and we should be able to, because there's just going to be 3 regular agenda items. Okay. Thanks, Council. With that, we are adjourned.